June 23rd, 1972. That date marks one of the most important federal laws passed for women and girls in American history. Title IX is modeled off part of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. It prohibits gender discrimination in educational programs and activities. The law was not originally intended to include sports, but the inclusion of that word activity in that law changed the course of women's athletics forever. As we celebrate Title IX's 50th anniversary, we salute several Chicago area women and girls changing the game right now. That includes an Evanston hockey player who made history this year just by being herself.
Making history can come with some nerves.
So I've been very anxious before games because, what if I'm too small to play these kids?
But for Ari Sashinsky, those doubts fade when her blades hit the ice.
I realized that I can do this, and it's not something that I really need to worry about.
After all, Ari has been doing this, playing with the boys, since she was about 7 years old.
I started playing with the boys very young, and I kind of just realized that I love the physicality.
This season, the now 15-year-old became the first girl to make an Evanston boys varsity team since the early 2000s, the first black girl to ever do so. And Ari did it as a freshman.
I mean, it's rare for boys to make a varsity team as freshmen, but I think with her position, how physical she is, how dedicated she is to the game, it was an easy decision.
DeLeon Morris is the director of the Evanston hockey program, played in it himself, and has coached Ari since she was a squirt. He says Evanston has been intentional in its efforts to get more kids of color in the sport since the 1960s.
Evanston's a very diverse city, so we try to match how our city is.
That's meant offering free hockey days to introduce kids to the sport and scholarships to remove the financial barrier for families. While Evanston's purposeful programming has made for a largely inclusive experience for players, it hasn't protected them from the realities of the sport.
I've not played many teams that have had black people, dark-skinned black people, and I think that's something that really needs to change.
NHL executive Kim Davis agrees. She's striving for that change at every level of the sport. The league investing millions to create pipelines for players like Ari to make it to the league.
If she wants to play professional women's hockey, there's a pathway for that. And there is no reason to not believe that she couldn't one day play in the NHL. We have women at every level and growing in the NHL, from scouts to general managers in waiting. The examples are there. She can be whatever she wants to be.
Already, Ari Sashinsky is a game changer.
Having people like me in the sport really opens the eyes to so many other people. It really makes people love the sport for not only, the way people play, but who's in it.
And a game winner.
Ari volunteers with her Rink's Learn to Skate program and was awarded a $5,000 scholarship earlier this year from the Black Girl Hockey Club. Well, juggling a soccer ball is not easy, and juggling the demands of being a professional athlete and motherhood is even more challenging. In a groundbreaking partnership, the Red Stars partnered up with a fertility clinic to offer a full range of services to their players. I spoke with Red Stars defender Erin Wright, who pushed for this after becoming a mother herself.
As a veteran defender for the Red Stars, Erin Wright is not afraid to make an unexpected cut.
Since there was not a lot of people that had done it, there wasn't really a clear pathway that I had, so I was like, I'm going to take a gamble.
For Wright and her husband, that gamble meant throwing out the prescribed timeline of when a professional athlete can become a mother.
We decided, let's not time it. Let's just kind of see, roll the dice and see what happens.
Wright got pregnant in 2019, missed the last few games of that season, but not the next because of pandemic cancellations. While Wright says the timing could not have worked out better, the transition to motherhood was by no means easy. On her body,
it's almost like this bionic body that is not really mine, but is mine now. So I'm having to reinvent myself and teach myself because my stride's different. The way I strike the ball is different. There's so many different elements to the way that I play the game that I've had to reteach myself.
Her schedule is different too.
Figuring out, does daycare work? Does having a personal sitter at home work? It's a lot of communication with my staff, a lot more than I've ever had to have, being like, hey, can I come early for treatment, or can I stay late? I know you're not supposed to be in at these hours, but can we make this work so that I can have my body in the best possible shape that it needs to be to then do my job?
Wright says she's learning through trial and error, and in the process, leading by example, sharing her blueprint, and advocating for women to have a choice in if, when, and how they start a family.
Our lifespan in this job is going all the way up to 40 years old, and I'm sure it'll continue to hopefully go up even farther. But with that now comes, okay, well, I shouldn't have to choose between having a family, and I shouldn't have to choose between doing my job. I should be able to do them both.
That choice now bolstered by a groundbreaking new partnership between the Red Stars and Fertility Centers of Illinois. That will provide players with free access to a full range of fertility services, something that Wright said most NWSL players wouldn't be able to afford otherwise.
Having the option for women to freeze their eggs and have the security and not feel stressed by their biological clock that, hey, I can't do my job, I need to go ahead and start a family, will only elevate their game and be able to play with more freedom because they know they have peace of mind in that aspect.
The partnership between the Red Stars and Fertility Centers of Illinois is just the second of its kind in the National Women's Soccer League. Well, there are few athletes who have racked up as many accolades as Candace Parker. The Naperville native was recently named one of Time Magazine's 100 most influential people in 2022. That after leading her hometown team to its first WNBA title in franchise history. She's been the leader on championship teams at every level, from high school, college, in the pros, and at the Olympics. She's also made a name for herself as an NBA analyst. Marshall Harris caught up with a star who is always striving.
Anytime basketball is on, it doesn't matter if it's overseas basketball, if it's college, if it's pro, if it's semi-pro, whatever it is, I'm watching. And so to be able to have, and I say the second best job because I think the first best job is playing basketball, to be able to commentate, this is something I would do at home on my couch. So I think it's amazing to be able to do it alongside some of the best that have ever played the game.
You come home, you win a championship. I know the last time I talked to you, you were kind of still soaking it all in. Have you kind of been able to put in perspective what that means for your legacy and for you personally?
I think going back home and winning a championship, I couldn't have dreamed it any better. And especially not having the perfect season, we had ups and downs. We weren't playing very well throughout the season, came in as a 6th seed. So I think it was amazing to be able to do it with the group that we had, but also to do it in front of the very people that saw me first pick up a basketball.
How excited are you about the prospect of running it back?
Listen, I understand the ins and outs and all that goes into winning a championship. So I've learned in my I won't say young career because I'm kind of old, but I've learned in my long career that, when you start looking too far out, that's when, you forget about today and the importance of today. We're no longer the hunter, we're the hunted. So there's pressure that comes with that as well.
It seems like it's been such a growth experience to watch the evolution of the women's college game specifically over the last 20 years or so.
I think visibility is key. You have to see it on television. You have to fall in love with it in March. And then from there, I think the game continues to grow in terms of attention and visibility and, that buzz that March Madness creates.
It's been such a full off season for you, namely because not just on the court, but off the court, adding to your family. To have another child, what has that experience been like for you, and how have you balanced work and family?
They are literally my happy, whether I win, whether I lose, whether I do well on air, broadcasting, analyzing, whatever, I'm mom at home.
In her 15th season, Parker recently became the oldest player to record a triple-double in WNBA history. And from a 36-year-old Naperville basketball star to a 64-year-old figure skater from Crystal Lake, we head out to Glacier Ice Arena to meet Cindy Krause, who's driven by joy and has no plans of slowing down from competing in the U.S. Adult Figure Skating Championships.
Skating is my passion, and one of the things that we all know in the adult world is that if you do the things you love, it just brings on more energy.
You can't watch Cindy Krause skate without feeling her joy.
There's nowhere you can go where you feel like you're flying unless you actually were flying. So I love the ice.
For someone who loves the ice as much as Krause, it may come as a surprise that she spent about half her life off of it, skating recreationally until she reached high school and then taking a 35-year break.
My young niece decided that they would like to try skating, so I took them to the rink, and they were kind of like a board hugger, and I was like, whoa, this is the best thing that's ever happened to me.
Krause wanted more, so at 47 years old, she hired a coach.
We had been together for about 25 minutes, and she said to me, have you ever thought about competing? And I thought, well, who's there to compete against? I'm old.
Krause had aged out of the amateur circuit, but found herself squarely in the mix of the U.S. adult figure skating world.
Most skaters lose the ability to do certain jumps and spins as they get older. Well, the opposite is true for Cindy, who's actually picking things up in her 40s, 50s, and 60s that she was never able to do in her teens.
When I turned 50, the week of my birthday, I landed my first double sow cow.
Now 64, Krause has 2 double jumps and is working on a 3rd. She's qualified for nationals 14 of 17 years and won it all in 2009. And while Krause says she has a healthy fear of falling, it's the wisdom of years that keeps her flying. The knowing that she skates for no one but herself, for no reason other than a love for the sport.
I don't worry about placements. I don't worry about the other skaters. I really am concerned with putting on a good performance so that everybody, the judges, the audience, the other skaters, will just know how much I love to skate.
Cindy says she trains up to 5 days a week and plans to keep going for years to come. Well, earlier this year, the Mount Carmel High School boys wrestling team won its first state team championship since 1994. However, there's another wrestler training at the Southside Powerhouse who won a national title. And it's someone you wouldn't expect at the all-boys high school. We check in with the 10-year-old making all the right moves.
My older brother Jaden, he would come home and practice with me and show me a few moves he learned.
10-year-old Mercedes Carrasco might have picked up the sport of wrestling from her older brother, but she's made the moves her own.
I just keep my head focused and not to worry about anything else but the person I'm wrestling.
Most of the time, the person she's wrestling is a boy. Mercedes is one of just a few girls in the Caravan Kids Wrestling Club, a decade-old program out of Mount Carmel that gets elementary-age kids on the mat.
The number one thing I'll say about Mercedes is she's fearless.
The program's founder and director, Roberto Garay, says Mercedes immediately took to the sport.
She started wrestling in the spring of 2021, and once the COVID restrictions were lessened a little bit, we were able to get some practices in, and she immediately wanted to compete.
And when she did compete, she did quite well.
She's not afraid of going up against the boys. She did really well. She was second in our regional, and she took 3rd in the sectional.
In the regional, Mercedes competed against all boys. Sectionals, a mix of girls and boys.
Sometimes they look scary, where I'm scared, but then I end up beating them. So it's what is there to be scared of?
When Mercedes got the invitation to compete at the USA Wrestling Women's Nationals, her coaches actually warned her against going because it was a different style of wrestling. But Mercedes was adamant that she did not want to miss her opportunity.
I wanted to go because I feel like I was going to win.
But in her first go on the national stage in Fort Worth, Texas, Mercedes had a new challenge. She was coachless.
I wasn't able to make it. Her head coach, Rob Forbes, wasn't able to make the trip. And one of our rivals from Oak Forest, Warriors Wrestling Club, one of their coaches stepped into her corner and coached her to a national title.
In just her 2nd year of competition, Mercedes is a national champion. But she says she's far from done. Her goal?
To become an Olympic champion and to break the stereotype that wrestling is just for boys.
Already, she's inspired at least one girl to join, her 8-year-old sister Alexi.
Mercedes also competed in an international tournament where she wrestled girls from Sweden and Finland. So she's definitely on her way to taking those steps toward a future Olympic Games. Well, in her first 2 weeks of life, Allie Marconi had several brain and spinal cord surgeries. The doctors were unsure of her future. Now she's become one of the better bowlers in the state. I caught up with the inspiring high school sophomore at Arlington Lanes in Arlington Heights.
Bowling is a largely individual sport, but at Friend High School, it sure feels like a team.
There are some days where it's just like, oh gosh, like school and you're just worrying about everything, but then you come to bowling and you see friends like that and it's just amazing.
Allie Marconi's best friend is Allie Marconi, who became the girls bowling team's first wheelchair bowler last season and the first athlete to represent Fremd in the wheelchair division this postseason, winning her regional to qualify for state.
The first round I had nerves and then my friend Allie said, you got this.
As it turns out, Allie more than had it. In her second year as a competitive bowler, she placed third in state. But Allie, well, she's used to defying expectations.
I was born with spina bifida, so my neurosurgeon and my doctors told my parents that I would never walk or talk, but I proved them wrong.
Ellie's grit and determination, an inspiration to her teammates.
Like if I'm having a rough day, I'm just like, you know what? Ellie's out here, she's doing her thing, she's being the awesome human being that she is, and that just helps motivate me to get back up, try again, and whatnot.
And while the way Allie bowls may differ from her typically able teammates, Coach Paul Raddick says she's held to the same standard.
I think the girls knowing that along with Ellie being in a wheelchair, Ellie is also, more importantly, a bowler on the team, and it doesn't change how hard she competes. It doesn't change how committed she is to improving as a bowler. And when we bowl, it's Ellie's a bowler.
Ellie is a bowler with goals. Next year, she wants to
go from third to first
in state and work up her physical strength so she can
to my arm.
But already, Ellie's strength is on full display.
Just means the world to me that I'm lifting up other people.
Allie is serious about reaching that goal of bowling without a ramp, and she's already exceeded so many expectations in her life, so this is just another challenge to be met. In Evanston, it's been a season to remember for 3 of Northwestern's women's teams. Last fall, the Cats won their first national championship in field hockey. The powerhouse lacrosse team returned to the Final Four, while the softball team made it back to the Women's College World Series for the first time in 15 years. Here's Matt Zahn with their story.
What a season it's been for Northwestern softball. They swept the Big Ten postseason awards. Pitcher of the Year, Danielle Williams. Player of the Year, Rachel Lewis. And Coach of the Year, Kate Drohan. This as they won their first regular season conference title since 2008.
It's been a while since the program's won it, so it feels good to bring it back to the program. And I think I've been here for 5 years now, so finally to get that ring, it feels pretty good.
It feels so good. It's kind of unreal, but I love it so much. We work so hard for this, and I'm so proud of us.
I think it really speaks to the team's consistency. They've battled week in and week out, for the last 2 months. So I think it's meant a lot to us.
In a special season for the Cats, one of the individual moments that stood out was Rachel Lewis hitting her 58th career home run, setting the program's all-time record. I see you're now the home run queen here.
Yeah, it feels pretty good. Took it from another all-time great, so pretty cool to have her at the game to watch. So love Tammy, and she's always in the corner and always there to support us.
Yes, Tammy Williams, who set the mark back in 2009, happened to be at the game where Rachel hit 2 home runs to break it.
I actually didn't know she was at that game until she was going crazy, but it was really cool to have her there. and just be that support system. I've known her ever since I got here, so she's been awesome, and she took me under her wing and kind of showed me the ropes here. So
She was fine with you breaking a record?
I think there's a little bit of ego involved, but like there's always going to be. I would feel the same way. So she obviously was incredibly happy for me, and I have nothing but respect for her. So it was just a really cool moment.
After an impressive 45-13 record, Northwestern's future is brighter than ever. All 5 seniors with another year of eligibility just announced plans to return next season, including Big Ten Pitcher of the Year Danielle Williams. So watch out for the Cats in 2023. Overcoming obstacles, literally. A Hinsdale Central freshman spent her spring break ascending more than 11,000 feet to Mount Everest Base Camp. This summer, she plans to climb another one of the tallest mountains in the world in Mount Kilimanjaro. But for her, it's about more than a love of Mother Earth, but a mission to protect it.
Sanvi Mailavarpu has a message.
We don't need to save the planet, we just have to stop spoiling it.
And ambition.
My goal is to summit Mount Everest before I graduate high school.
As a high school freshman, Sanvi's passion for exploring the planet and protecting it is already informed by years of experience, visiting her first national park at 6 years old.
We randomly ended up going to Mammoth Caves National Park, and my mom loved it. And then after that, we went to Arches National Park and a couple other national parks in Utah. And ever since then, we visited over 20 national parks here in the U.S.
While the miles hiked have quickly added up, she estimates she's logged upward of 600. It's the rhythm of putting one foot in front of the other that she says makes nature such a brilliant educator.
We're always so fast in our in life, and I really take time to slow down a little bit. And of course, there's highs and lows on every hike, but I feel like once I get back, I don't remember any of the lows. I always remember the great views, though, and that I experienced.
Sanvi says she's never experienced lows like on her most recent adventure, hiking to Mount Everest Base Camp and summiting Kalapatar at 18,550 feet.
I didn't have insulated shoes, so my feet froze, so I was in a lot of pain going up.
But when Sanvi and her family made it to the top,
we saw the first sunrise on Mount Everest, and the sunrise literally hits the peak of Mount Everest. It's so beautiful, and it just makes everything worth it.
It's moments like this Sanvi wants to share through her social media series, Sanvi Speaks, inspiring others to not only fall in love with the planet, but work to protect it.
And it's actually scientifically proven that the more time you spend around nature, your carbon footprint actually decreases. So my whole perspective is go outside and explore the planet to your fullest extent and just learn from nature.
And there's another suburban teenage climber doing the seemingly impossible. 18-year-old Lucy Westlake from Naperville recently became the youngest American woman to reach the summit of Mount Everest. She breaks an age mark that had stood for 15 years. Lucy's feat included 10 hours of climbing in the dark in negative 20-degree Fahrenheit temps with high winds as well. Westlake started climbing at the age of 7 and has reached the summit of the highest mountains on 5 continents. This is just a tiny sample of the women and girls who are thriving in athletics, showing that without a doubt, women and girls belong in sports. And so much of what they've accomplished was made possible with the 37 words that make up Title IX. There's still a long way to go in creating full gender equity in sports. But if we've learned anything in the last 50 years, it's that when women and girls get the opportunities they deserve, they shine. Thanks for joining us. I'm Jackie Kostek.